Look, you've been working on so much in terms of getting a stimulus, reacting to this coronavirus with stimulus, and I recognize you've been doing a lot in terms of small business. Give us your reaction to what we're hearing from Bob Woodward and what the president said and did once COVID was pretty much known to all of us.
Well, look, I haven't read the book, and we have so much going on here. I'm not going to probably read it or any of the other books that are out, but let me say a couple things about it. And I did listen to part of the audio, okay? First of all, what the president did. I mean, despite what you heard on that tape, they did the ban of entry from China. They began to move the operation of government. They ultimately mobilized private industry to have ventilators. At one time, there was a real fear that we would have a shortage of those. We're going to have a vaccine faster than any time in the history of the world, and it's going to be a real vaccine, not a fake Russian one. So these are all things that have happened and have been mobilized, and they deserve credit for it. Now, do I prefer that the American people had been told the more fully, sort of the risks and the threat early on? Sure. I think there's always the risk, of course, that if he had done that in January or early February, I can guarantee you that we would have seen the same reaction that we got when he did the China travel ban, and that it would have been criticism. Oh, he's trying to deflect from impeachment. Oh, he's trying to rile people up. In fact, there were multiple media outlets that were downplaying the virus threat to the country. So, but that said, I think in hindsight, a few extra weeks of having on the front end, having done more about it would have certainly been helpful. But I don't think that negates all the positive things that they have done to help us respond to this truly unprecedented and historic challenge.
Yeah, in the meantime, the president has been the first president to actually push back on China and its bad behavior. You've been working a lot on this, and I want to talk to you about this because protecting intellectual property has become top of the agenda. The U.S. revoking visas for more than 1,000 Chinese nationals. A State Department spokesperson noting that those banned are, quote, high-risk graduate students and research scholars representing a small subset of those entering the United States for education. Senator, what can you tell us about this? You've been at the forefront of protecting our information from China. Today, calling on Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin to review the acquisition of an American nutrition company, GNC, to a Chinese state-owned pharmaceutical company. How does this happen?
Well, first of all, that company, one of the things that the Chinese state-owned enterprises have been able to do is to go in as investors and sort of buy up these companies or get a hold of them when they're in distress. Now, people say, well, who cares about a vitamin company, GNC? It's not their intellectual property in that case. It's about data. GNC holds data on millions of Americans that have been their customers. If anyone's ever gone to a GNC, you get this account, they take down your phone number, they take down your purchase history, your information, your payment history. Data, personal data on individuals is probably the most valuable commodity in the world today because everything's going to be built on big data. Everything from intelligence and national security to the way we sell commercial products, the delivery of precision medicine. And to just turn that over to a country like China that has a clear, not just mercantilist economic policy, but a predatory one in which they seek not simply to overtake the United States, but to be the dominant geopolitical and economic power in the world, is a self-inflicted wound. So, that's the reason why we care about the GNC sale. It's not the vitamins, it's the data. And that needs to be reviewed because that's the data of millions of Americans that are going to belong to the Chinese government.
That's the same issue when it comes to hotels. There are hotels that are owned by Chinese companies. When you go up to check in, they're taking your picture, they're taking your data. All of this data is being mined, and is the Chinese Communist Party tracking that, tracking American citizens?
Well, they most certainly have the ability to if they so wanted it. And any company that tells the Chinese company that tells you that that's not true is being disingenuous. Chinese law basically says if we tell you we want the data, you have to give it to us. By the way, that's the issue with TikTok. It's not the videos, it's the data. They are collecting extraordinary amounts of data on the people using it. And that happens to be younger Americans. Today, they're teenagers. 10 or 15 years from now, they'll be in our national security leaders. And 25 years from now, they'll be the CEO of important companies. And all of that data accumulated over time gives them information, not just about them, but the people in their lives. And most 14-year-olds don't own their own phone. That phone is provided to them by a family and parents and others. And again, I just can't emphasize enough how important data is in the 21st century and how being able to steal it and operationalize it the way the Chinese government can poses a threat to this country.
Really, really important points that you're making, Senator, because that data can be used against us. It's also being used to empower the Chinese military. The Pentagon recently unveiled a list of 20 companies that it says are controlled or owned by the Chinese military, including Huawei, many of them, Hikvision. Why is this so important? As we learned earlier this week that now the Chinese Communist Party has built a larger Navy than the United States, Senator.
Well, so the United States government, Microsoft does work for the Department of Defense, but we don't own Microsoft. We don't own AT&T. We don't own Google or Amazon. In the case of these companies, they are structured like independent, but no company in China is independent. None. They are all under the control of the government. So imagine if you're one of these companies, just like the technology company, and you're now providing, like Huawei, rural service for broadband and rural service for 5G and so forth. It also happens to be strategically located near important American military installations. Or you make these surveillance cameras that have been installed in military facilities. All of that creates the opportunity for backdoors where China doesn't have to send spies. They can just use a backdoor to get into the camera, get into the internet, get into the 5G network, and have a real-time presence in our country near military bases here and our bases around the world through companies that they control and have to do whatever the Chinese government and military tell them to do. So it's a very dangerous situation. It's important.
Which is why you have been aiming to stop or limit the amount of investment into the Chinese military from the United States, in terms of stopping investment into China. That's what the president tried to do with stopping the thrift fund from investing in Chinese companies that are, in many cases, building military equipment. He did that with the railroad retirement as well. What's your take on these big IPOs coming? There's XPeng, there's Chin Data, and of course, then there's the Ant Group that's going to go public in Hong Kong. Is this going to, some way or another, absorb U.S. investments into China to empower their own military? Do people understand this?
No doubt.
And where is this going, Senator? Do you think corporate America understands that maybe they should start thinking about national security issues when it comes to America's safety and not selling their widgets to 1.4 billion people?
Well, I think some companies do. Many don't. They're looking for a rate of return on their shares. They want value for their shareholders. They want good quarterly performance. And investing in companies that have almost exclusive access to the most populous nation on earth is attractive to them, both in the short and midterm. But that's a big blind spot for us because it's also driving American investment dollars away from creating jobs in places in our country that have been deindustrialized and gutted and towards building these national champions that pose a threat to our national security. And you talk about the thrift savings fund. Think about the irony of this. Members of the U.S. military have their funds invested for retirement in that fund, and then that money's being used to invest in companies that are building the weapons designed to kill them. That's how ridiculous it is.
Unbelievable. Yeah, that is ridiculous. All right, let me switch gears, ask you about the Senate aiming to pass a stimulus plan later today, Senator, providing $300 a week for unemployment through December 27th. Where are the sticking points? Does this bill have any life? I mean, do you think this is actually going to pass?
Well, it should, because it'll make things better. And that's the thing. You can't have, even if we can't do everything, if we can do something to make things better, this will help people. It isn't ultimately probably going to become law because I believe Nancy Pelosi and Senator Schumer have made the decision that they are better off doing nothing politically for November. In essence, they've calculated, let's do nothing. Things will get really bad. People will be hurting. They'll blame Donald Trump and they'll vote against Republicans in November. That's the calculation they've made. And as long as that's the calculation they hold, I think they're going to object to doing anything. And they made that decision a while back. It's unfortunate. I think rank and file Democrats are ready to do a deal, but they're not allowing them to negotiate or talk to us. And as a result, small businesses, individual Americans, schools are all going to be hurt, are not going to get funds that are right there. We can vote on it and pass it because Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer have decided that it's better off for them in November and for Joe Biden if we do nothing so things get bad and Donald Trump gets blamed for it.
That is a sad state of affairs. Meanwhile, as far as your role on the Senate Intel Committee, I just want to ask you about the Russia probe. We're waiting on John Durham's investigation, but we know that the FBI briefed the Senate Intel Committee back in February of 2018 when it was clear that the dossier was garbage. Did the FBI lie or really not have candor with the Senate Intel Committee when it reported its findings on the dossier in 2018?
Well, members of the Yeah, members of the FBI staff met with members of the Intel Committee staff. They did not brief the members individually. But if you go through the final volume of the report, it basically shows you what we said. One of the things that the report basically points to and that I pointed to was perhaps the single biggest piece of foreign interference in 2016 was the Steele dossier. It was prepared by a foreigner using foreign sources. They tried to inject it into the campaign back in October of that year. They were shopping it around to the media, and the FBI gave it credibility when they should not. And they gave it credibility against the advice and the strenuous objections of the intelligence community. They told them, don't use this stuff, and the FBI moved forward on it anyway, and there needs to be consequences for that.
And of course, let's not forget, it was Hillary Clinton who actually paid for that dossier during an election year, one political party digging dirt on another. Senator Marco Rubio, it's great to see you this morning, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.